I bought a quad Cortex. Let's open up this sucker, see what it's all about. Come join me. Guys, what is going on? IkeGuitar here. As you know, a couple weeks ago I sold my Kemper Profiler. Bittersweet moment, but it was time to move on. Now listen, I'm not sold on what the next solution is for me. I've got a couple things I'm working through for my rig, but I did go and pick up the Quad Cortex by Neural DSP. The Quad Cortex is the newest amplifier modeler capture system on the market today, made by Neural DSP. It is a very powerful workhorse with a lot of cool options and is backed by Neural's ecosystem of incredible plugs and features already. Now, there are a lot of those things that are still being developed for the Quad Cortex, but I am going hands-on and going to open up from start to finish my Quad Cortex, gauge my reactions in the moment, and we're gonna go in, look at some of the features, and see if we can get a good sound out of this thing. Let's go. All right, so let's go ahead and open up this Quad Cortex. This should be pretty exciting. All right, we got some packaging, some filler. Ooh. First off, we got the typical Sweetwater Pro Gear style of brochure. Sweetwater, as far as I know, is the only dealer of the Quad Cortex in the United States. And here it is, the Quad Cortex. Oh my gosh, this thing looks absolutely beautiful. Neural, algorithmically perfect on the front there, looks very nice. We'll take this little sleeve off here. Oh yeah, that looks really cool. And there it is, the Quad Cortex. You know, honestly, it's a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. This thing, oh my gosh. There it is, boys and girls, the Quad Cortex by Neural DSP. It's got all those inputs and outputs you saw on the front, matted steel finish. Now, as far as inside the box is concerned, I'll just put this right here. You've got a couple of Neural stickers. We've got some kind of QR code. Scan the QR code to download the user manual and guide. Everyone likes a good sticker now and then. And then the Quad Cortex safety leaflet right here. Standardization for the FCC and all that stuff. I assume this is our power cable. A USB-A to USB-B for communication with your computer. Power supply, as well as a bunch of different adapters for different European voltage requirements. A Neural DSP guitar pick, so that's pretty cool. Now let's plug the sucker in and show you guys how it all works. All right, so we'll go through the boot up process. I'll show you how the thing works, and I'll go through the menus a bit and kind of explain to you how things work. I'm not gonna be going too deep into this thing, just enough to get a taste for it, and then we'll do another video where I actually review the actual Quad Cortex in its entirety, tell you guys my full opinion of it. So we're gonna boot up now. I'm gonna set up a Logic thing while I wait for this. Logic. So, boot up time, not super long, which is great. We don't want a super long boot up time. So this is the first thing that pops up when you open up the Quad Cortex for the first time. We've got a couple of things here I want to tell you guys about. So first off, the Quad Cortex has a ton of different multi-output options, stereo options, mono options, and everything that the Quad Cortex uses, it's all intrinsically DSP based. We know that already, but depending upon what row you have your preset in, for example, if it's on section 1 and 2, it's going to be a different set of DSP chips than sections 3 and 4. So what Neural suggests to you guys in the user manual is to make sure that when you set up a profile that's very heavy in, big delays or time-based effects or very DSP-heavy processing, I recommend splitting the signal paths between the two of the rows. So preset navigation system's pretty simple in my mind. As you can see, we're on 1A, Brit 2203, A bank. This one we have highlighted to the left here. And there is an A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H bank. They're all over here in this bottom row here. And the way you move around the presets is based on this option right here. You can change it from stomp to scene to preset. Talk about that in a second here. But in this preset option, I move to a preset, and then when I select it with my encoder and press B again, it's going to load it, right? That's 10B, right? If I move over to C, it's gonna say 10C crunchy, right? Move over to 10D, it's gonna be Squids versus Vixen. And I'm just gonna change. So there's a ton of different presets that they filled this thing up with. But remember, to change within the bank, I have to select it and then press that initiation button again. All right, so we'll leave it at Nashville session for now, but that's the idea, okay? Now you'll notice that some of these presets are grayed out, all right? Every icon has a specific function. So those that are not grayed out are active in the preset in the moment, right? So you're gonna hear all these things come out the multi-out section. Now by default, your routing multi-out goes through all the outputs. If you wanna change what signal paths go through what output, you have to make that apparent when you add a multi-output, right? You can select from the output screen where different outputs go. And there are tons of outputs. There's an output 1, 2, an output 3, 4. They have sends, and they have USB outputs as well. When you select multiple outputs, it's effectively going to every single output on the back of the quad Cortex. Something to keep in mind. So as far as this session is concerned, we look at our first input block. It's going to be an adaptive gate. Now what's interesting, with the latest update, they actually made gates intrinsic. So if I long press an input, I can add in a noise gate directly into the first part of the signal path. Now that's on the guitar side, so it mitigates guitar hum. And then of course, since we're in software already, anything like overdrives or like that, they're going to sound great because they don't have a lot of extra gain, right? They're not going to be like an analog inducing noise kind of a thing. Everything's very isolated and it's all really cool. So that being said, if I go into this right here, that's a guitar overdrive. Now note that this overdrive is not activated. You can know it's not activated because it's grayed out. Now if I double press, it's going to activate it, right? If I double press again, it's going to deactivate it. See, right now I'm in preset mode, all right? So when I'm in preset mode, this thing is not open by default. If I wanted to turn this on, I could select the power button right here. It's going to give me all of these options. It's going to map to different encoders. So for example, here is the gain on encoder A, bass on encoder B, treble on encoder C, etc. Every single block that takes up a space on the workflow UI is going to assign one of those parameters to the encoder. And the encoders are really cool. They are well made, and you can minutely adjust every single piece of this overdrive and every effect in general. Now when I deactivate this, okay, this overdrive is not set up by default. But if I go into stomp mode allows me to treat one of these patches like a pedal board. So every effect effectively gets assigned to an encoder. Now if I go into this encoder for an example, you'll notice the stomp icon is set to A. That means when I press the A encoder, it's going to activate that overdrive. So now I've got two overdrives here, right? So you can kind of see where, based on the colors, where they assign to input blocks, but it's always important that you kind of check where the input blocks are going. So for example, in this parametric EQ, there is no assigned block to it, right? But I can assign a block, and I want to select the foot switch I want to assign it to. It's going to select it to D. We'll just say D, just because we can. When I select the D encoder, anything that's tied to the D encoder is going to be activated. So you'll notice D is also attached to this digital delay down below. If I press D, it's going to deactivate both my EQ and that delay on that second row of outputs. So one thing I'm not a fan of that quad does with this is that it does automatically assign encoders to whenever I put an input block down. So that is a cool feature about this. The stomp mode does allow you to make an entire session just like this with all these different parameters and allow you to effectively make them into a pedal board, every single one of them. So after my Brit Blues overdrive, just note that there is a point where the signal chain breaks off, and we are doing multiple output rows. So be aware that going out of row 3, which is our output, we actually have 2 different signal paths, okay? We actually have a neural capture into a cab simulator going into an EQ, hitting this opto comp, right? And that's going straight through. And then we have, after this overdrive, we actually have a physical amplifier. And we actually have a guitar amp going into another cab sim and then back into another EQ if we wanted it. So parallel, we have 2 different guitar signal paths hitting this output right here on row 3. And that's pretty cool. I think as far as going through different options and different tonal palettes, having multiple amps, multiple parallel lines, going through different amplifiers or cab sims is a really cool feature. And then also, we also have a previous row over here. So what this is saying is that based on the previous row, okay, we also have all of our time-based effects going out as well, okay? So this is gonna take this previous row and then send a whole other side of the multi-output just for the reverbs and delays. So all in all, we go into N1, we hit 2 different parallel amp and cab sims, we move down to row 3, which is based on this row right here. All of that gets pushed out through this second DSP section, hitting all the time-based effects. So effectively, we have 2 different speaker or cab sims, depending on what we want, and we're hitting all those time-based effects on a separate DSP line so that we're not bogging down the quad Cortex. And just for the sake of argument, let me just play some of this for you. We've been talking about it this whole time. Let me play some of it for you, just so you know what this preset sounds like. Guys, thank you so much for watching this first video of many on the Quad Cortex. If you liked it, please consider subscribing. This is not the end of our Quad Cortex series. We did the unboxing, preliminary setup. Next video we're going through how I create a patch on the Quad Cortex, and the final video will be a review. Do we keep the Quad Cortex or do we get rid of it? The truth revealed. If the video has been released already, check it out right here. You're not going to want to miss it. It's an amazing second part to this series, really deep diving in and seeing how you can get a good sound out of this device. Have a great one, guys, and we'll see you next time on IkeGuitar.